Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melisa Liberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Today, we're talking about comparing yourself to other consultants and what that's costing you, because it's costing you more than you think. And the irony of this is, as I was getting ready to press record for this episode, I was listening to some music, scrolling a little bit, and I just noticed an email coming into my inbox about the subject line was something like, they're using AI better than you. Like, we're faced with these comparisons all day long, whether it's emails we're getting or social media or mostly the things we're inflicting upon ourselves. All of these comparisons to other consultants, all of these comparisons to other business owners. And I want to talk with you about this today because it is costing you more than you might imagine, and why it's costing you more than you might imagine, and what to do about it so that you aren't put in this compare and despair cycle that's so common for us as independent consultants, as business owners, as people who are really responsible for everything in our business. So that's what we're here for today. This is really important. You might think, well, it's just part of life. We compare ourselves. And that is true for sure. I mean, I literally just saw that email and started wondering, oh, what is someone else doing that I don't know, right? That's like this automatic almost reaction that we have. And of course it is human, but I think it's more important to, rather than brushing this off to say, oh, it's just part of the way it is, to really look at this situation where you're comparing yourself and number one, to notice you may not even be aware of the ways in which you are comparing, and then also what to do about it to avoid more of it, and then what to do when it just does naturally occur. I mean, I'm talking with you today about what to do, what tools to use to reduce the impact of you comparing yourself. And I literally just got a small panic in my, feeling when I read that subject line in my email. Of course, I deleted the email, but nonetheless, that's what we're here for. So this is really important for you as a business owner to make this a long-lasting business for you, one that is fulfilling, one that is rewarding. This is a situation that you're going to want to have a method of managing, a method of mitigating and managing. All right, let's talk about the agenda for today, and then we'll dive into the episode. First, we're going to talk about the companion resource that goes with today's episode, so you can leverage this tool right away to help you in this zone of comparing. Then we'll talk about what this sounds like. What does comparing sound like? And I think you might be surprised. I'm going to share a few stories with you about real life scenarios of when I've talked with the consultants and they've told me that they're comparing themselves to their peers, to others in the industry. And you might be surprised about some of these situations. So that's the first thing we'll do after the companion resource. Then let's talk about that impact. Why does this matter? Why is it something you don't want to just brush off and say, oh, that's just how things are? It's so natural for us to compare ourselves to people. And you want to really see where this is impacting your ability to be successful or even more successful as an independent consultant. We'll talk through that. Then I'll talk with you about the root causes. The email that I got is not the root cause of this comparison. I could have just read it like any other email, right? Let's talk about the root cause of this comparison and the impacts it's having. And then we'll talk about ways to manage this very specifically, very practically, but also at the root cause. I'm not going to tell you just ignore the things. We're going to talk about ways to tackle this root cause, and we'll wrap it up with how to put this episode into action. So that's what we're here for today. All right, my friend. The companion resource for today's episode is the Consulting Mindset Audit. If you've done this before, I would highly recommend that you go and do this again. This is one of these audits And if you've listened to this podcast before, you know that I've got a series of these audits and assessments. This is one of them that's really valuable to take periodically. If you've already taken it, great, go take it again and see where your results compare against last time you took it. If you haven't yet taken it, go take this mindset audit. As a business owner, one of the most important levers you have that is the difference between being successful and having a long standing business that you love, that is fulfilling, that's financially rewarding, versus feeling like you're struggling, feeling like you're in feast or famine, worrying about cash flow. One of the biggest differences is your mindset. And it's really important to see where your areas of opportunity are and where your strengths are so you can double down on those. So go take the mindset audit at icmindset.com and you'll get a report that gives you a breakdown of your mindset in 5 or 6 different categories and shows you where things are green, where they're orange, and where they're red, and helps you to then create a plan to put in place to start tackling it. It's not just about how's your mindset. This is about what do you do about the results. And the results page tells you all of that. Okay, now let's talk about this comparing. And I told you I would give you a few examples from real life independent consultants and to show you that this is so common. And truly, it does not matter how long you've been in business. This is something that is so important to be aware of and to manage and to not just assume that it goes away over the course of time. I'll give you these examples. There's 3 of them. The first one is from a consultant who's been in business for around 10 years, and they have a multi-6-figure track record every single year, 200,000, 300,000, 350,000, 400,000, 350,000. Like those over and over again in that range, year over year. That's what this consultant has been generating, for the last 6 or 7 of those 10 years. Very successful, very even, right? Even keeled, has a very strong status quo essentially, or baseline against which they're operating. And they're very well known in the industry. They go to a lot of events. They are asked to do a lot of speaking and are very well known in the industry. But as part of this, as part of their lead generation process, and I'm purposefully not using names or even pronouns just to protect that anonymity, but the story is really important, and that's what I want to relate to you. And so as part of this particular consultant's business process, their lead generation process, their business development process, they go to a lot of events. They, like I said earlier, they do a lot of speaking at these events, and other times they're in the audience, they're networking, they're reconnecting and maintaining relationships within the industry and have that status of being known for what they do and sought after for what they do. A lot of their leads are inbound leads. Like I'm describing for you as you're listening to this, a business that's highly desirable, right? One that without really honestly much effort, they can generate 400,000 or 500,000. Without really that much effort, ideal clients come to them. And I'm not saying this to you because I think you should compare yourself to their business. Please don't do that, especially that's the topic of this episode. But I say this to you because they have a highly desirable business that most of us would look at it and say, I want that. But the truth is, they're comparing themselves to other people. And the other day I was talking with them and they were saying, I went to this event and I had a conversation with another consultant who does something similar to what I do. And we were talking about an engagement that they had landed and how they structured it. And that consultant shared their pricing. And it turns out that they charge almost double what the consultant I was talking, the consultant I work with was charging. Of course, that consultant started panicking. Of course, that consultant started comparing themselves and thinking to themselves, I've been leaving so much money on the table for so long, I had no idea. And all of that feeling of I've got this under control look at the consistency, look at the certainty with which I'm running my business. All of that came into question for this consultant because of that one conversation, the comparing to the other consultant. I'll tell you what we did about this here in a minute when I share with you the tools to manage this. But as you can imagine, this is like devastating, like a gut punch. Like I thought I had everything under control, and I found out that I've been undercharging this whole time, is what this consultant was sharing with me. And that can send you into a spiral, right? When you start questioning everything you've been doing and whether you're legitimate or not, whether you really know what you're doing or not, whether people think that you're naive and so they're taking advantage of you or not. All of those things can create an incredible negative impact on your business if you allow them to. We'll talk about the impacts here in a minute. So that's a first example, and I share that with you because even someone like that who has so many amazing things going on in their business can fall into this comparison trap. And without catching it right away, without managing through it with the tools I'll share with you here in a little bit, this can create a devastating situation in a business, and you don't want that for sure. Another example of the three, the second of the three, is a new consultant who's been landing clients like crazy. And other consultants looking at them and saying, wait a second, they're in the same industry. They know the same people. They have a similar background, perhaps, to this person that on the surface of it, it looks like what is going on, right? You've maybe have been in that situation before. A specific scenario that I was working with a consultant and they'd been in the industry for 5 or 6 years. And they came to me and said, listen, this new person just left corporate. They've been asking me for help. How did I do this? Pick your brain, right? You could go back and listen to that episode. It was a pick your brain situation. And so they gave them a lot of help and spent a couple of hours over coffee telling this person who left corporate exactly everything they've done to generate leads and land business and price their work and land new work as projects were wrapping up, all of those things. What is this like? How do you deal with health insurance? All of these questions. And then 6 months later, they reconnect and that consultant has leapfrogged them, is so excited because they've landed all this business and are making more money than they ever imagined and things are going so well. It feels devastating. Again, I'll tell you what we did with these examples here in a minute, with the tools I'll share with you on how to handle this when you hit this situation, because it's inevitable for us to hit it. I don't want to say to you, well, let's just avoid it entirely. It's not possible. I told you just a minute ago in my email, I was experiencing this thing, but we want to manage it because of the impact it has. And then the third example, it was a consultant who's been in business for around 12 years. So again, over a decade, very sought after for what they do. Sees a similar consultant who they would consider a competitor at an industry event, and they start talking, and this similar consultant they're talking to starts telling them about this project that they recently landed. And the consultant that I work with and started helping after this scenario realized that was a project they had bid on, realized that they landed the project that they expected to land. And that other consultant, the similar consultant or competitor, has all these logos that the consultant that I was talking with and working with thought they should have. Now, nothing has gone wrong. These are normal situations to occur. Other people land work. Other people land work that you bid on. New consultants come out and they seem to have instant success. People you're talking to maybe charging more than you do. All of these things are normal situations. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you or your business or the way that you're managing the business. But when you allow that comparison to start seeping in to the way you think and influencing the choices you're making, influencing the priorities you're setting, that's when this impact starts having can have a very devastating toll on you and your business, and we don't want this to happen for you. The impacts, it's not just the emotional impact that most of us have, right? That feel of gut punch or a feeling of panic or that racing of, trying to think back to all the things you've done or not done and trying to figure out why this other person seems to have more success than you do. Those are certainly impacts. The emotional side of this is a real impact. And as a business owner, you want to have processes in place, strategies in place, tools in place to manage that emotional side of this business, because that emotional side, when you can manage it, keeps you going. When you don't have the ability to manage it, it's what sends you back to something you don't want to be doing. But beyond that, the impact, and I've seen this over and over again, luckily with these other 3 scenarios that I just shared with you, these consultants noticed it right away and we talked it through, and I'll share with you some of the tools that we leverage to make sure that it doesn't have these impacts. But the impacts are things like you changing your strategy. There's so many times where people come to me and say, oh, I think this is too crowded. I'm going to shift what I offer. Or I think that there's already really successful consultants in this niche or in this specialization, in this industry, in this geography. I'm going to pivot and do something different. And you change your strategy, one that likely you've been executing and getting really close to a breakthrough on, or you've been successful and don't even realize it or give yourself credit for it. And when you pivot or change your strategy because of this reason, you set yourself back. Now, listen, there's always a reason there can be valid reasons to change strategy. But when it's driven by you comparing yourself to others, that is an emotional reaction and it sets you back. Not only does it set you back from a business progress perspective, business achievement perspective, but it also sets you back emotionally and mentally, because you train your brain to say, oh, I can't handle that emotion of feeling panic or despair or fear. And so I've got to change my strategy. I can't manage that emotion, so I have to change my strategy. You don't want to be the business owner who has to change their strategy because you're feeling bad. The other impact is self-doubt and contributing to imposter syndrome. And when you're operating off of that self-doubt, which we all have, let's be honest, we all have. If you don't have that, then you've got another problem. You may not necessarily be as human in this business and you're leaving opportunity on the table. Maybe you're not pushing yourself far enough. It is normal to have self-doubt. But when you're allowing this comparison to come in and feed that self-doubt and fuel that self-doubt and make it grow, that's when it starts diluting your ability to operate. It dilutes your ability to be successful in the long run or to even want to do this. You start feeling demotivated, and so you slow down. And of course, for so many of us, when we start noticing other people that we feel are further ahead or we feel are better than we are or more successful than we are, when we start doing that comparison, then our natural reaction as a human is to make yourself smaller, is to shrink, is to be less visible, is to propose less, ask for less, put yourself out there for less. When this is not managed, and again, I'll share with you the tools here in a moment, but when this is not managed and you allow this comparison to run your business, you make yourself smaller and therefore your business is smaller. Your revenue is smaller. The opportunities you're landing are smaller. And finally, the most critical impact that I want to highlight for you is that you comparing yourself, you judging yourself, you trying to figure out, how is this other person better than I am? How is this person more successful than I am? How is this other person creating more revenue than I am? How are they pricing differently? You asking yourself questions in that way reinforces your identity of, I'm less than that person. Sometimes I hear from people, I'm just an extra pair of hands. I'm just a staff augmentation type of a consultant versus I want to be into much more advisory and retainers for advisory. But people see me as someone who's really good at execution. Whatever it is, that ending of that sentence is, I'm just a. When you are comparing yourself and finding other people that you think are further along than you are, or better than you are, or more well recognized than you are, or more sought after than you are, or more valuable than you are, then you're reinforcing whatever that identity is for you. I'm just a, fill in the blank. And that's what creates the imposter syndrome and makes you feel like you're behind. Rather than operating from the place of, this is where I want to go, and working backward, thinking of yourself as the $1 million consulting business owner and figuring out, how does that person think when they're the ones who are turning away work because they've landed so much of it? How does that person think and operate? That's where you want to be. You want to deal with this comparison head on and not ignore it because of these impacts. It's not just about making you feel bad, which is not fun in and of itself or productive if you let that fester, but even more so, it's making you shrink. It's slowing you down and reinforcing this identity of someone who is not sought after, who is not well known, who is not the consultant who's at the top of their game, who knows what they're doing. And we don't want to reinforce that identity for you. We want to reinforce the identity of that consultant who knows exactly what they're doing, who's so good at what they do for their clients, and knows exactly how to land business with high quality clients that will pay them exactly what they want to be paid. That's for you. All right, let's talk about the root cause of this. Of course, it's not for example, it's not the email that came across my inbox right before I pressed record. That's not the actual root cause because, if you think about it, you get so much input all day long. Emails, podcasts, YouTube videos, social media, LinkedIn, everything you're consuming. So much of it goes by you and you don't even notice it. So the root cause is not the actual thing that's creating the comparison. It's not the conversation with another consultant at an event that starts forcing you to compare. It's not that the other consultant at an event told you they won a deal that you thought you were going to win that creates this comparison and the spiral from it. It's not the other consultant that you're talking to at an event who tells you, how much their pricing is and it's so much different than yours. That then creates this sequence of events for you to start comparing and all of the spiral that comes with it. Those things are neutral. Those things can be happening all day long. You don't have to grab onto them. But the reason why we often do grab onto them is rooted in employee thinking. We're from an employee perspective, which, for many of us, we were employees for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, even in college and before that. We're taught to compare ourselves, to rank ourselves, to what grades did you get? What grades did I get? Compare those. How much money are you making in your salary for your first job? And compare those. We're taught, what's your title versus mine? Where is it in the org chart versus mine? Like, this is a society and a world we live in where that's what happens. We figure out how to order ourselves, how to succeed, what success even is by this constant ordering of things. But as an independent consultant, that no longer applies. You don't need to order yourself. You don't need to rank yourself. You don't need to put yourself into some imaginary org chart. You don't need to compare what you think your title is versus someone else's title or level of success. This is not a construct that's useful for you anymore, but it was when we were in corporate, right? Helped us to figure out how to get a promotion, what the promotion path was, all of these things, but it's not helpful anymore. And this is the root cause of it. And the trigger is almost always insecurity, right? Almost always insecurity. Oh, like the email I just got, you're far behind in AI, which is not actually true. I'm like testing out different apps and things I've created. This is actually not true. But the more we believe this, buy into it, the more that then we create this dynamic for ourselves that we think we're behind and we start reinforcing we're not as good as these other consultants, and it starts feeling like a house of cards. So this is really important to think about. What are the root causes here? What insecurities are you having right now? What self-doubt do you have right now? Where's your identity have some gaps that need to be worked on? Again, it's not a problem to actually compare yourself. The problem is when you allow those impacts to start taking root. And then from there, you have those impacts to your business, to what you're able to achieve in your business, to your level of fulfillment, and to the self identity that you're building for yourself and rebuilding for yourself. So now let's talk about the 3 ways to tackle these comparisons. These are the tools that I use with my clients, and these tools are tools that I leverage in those other scenarios that I was just sharing with you at the beginning, right? And the first one is, let's just believe that it's true. They are ahead of you. They are better, quote unquote, better than you. They are making more money than you, whoever it is you're comparing yourself to. Let's just start with tool number 1, which is, okay, great. That's all true. Wait for tool number 2. But for right now, tool number 1, it's true. They are ahead of you. It doesn't matter that someone else has been doing this for less time and they're further along. It doesn't matter if someone has been doing this for a lot longer than you have and you feel like you can never catch up. None of that matters. For you to acknowledge, you know what? They are pricing out higher than what I am. They did land that deal that I wanted to land. Rather than taking this personally and start making it about you not having what is required to be successful, use this as data points. Look what's possible. Look what's possible for me in this business. You have no idea. There might be one small tweak you could make, one small adjustment that will get you even beyond where they're at right now. The other thing that I think is so important, because I did this to myself for a long time when I first started, just this constant comparison, because I was looking for certainty, right? I wanted to know, is it possible for me to be successful in the long run? So I'm like constantly comparing myself to other people, trying to figure out, do I have what they have? Do I have more than what they have? I have something that's different. Is it good enough? This constant chatter. And it is because we're looking for some form of certainty. I'll add that to the root causes for you, right? To make ourselves feel better and to feel like, okay, I think this could be successful. But what we often miss when we do that is we have no idea where that other person started from. You could be comparing yourself to someone who has 20 years of experience in corporate selling work, whereas you don't, and you're starting that skill set from scratch. You both have similar skill set when it comes to delivering for the client, but maybe they have a lot more sales skills than you have. Spending any amount of time trying to figure out, why are they further along? Why are they quote unquote better? Why are they more quote unquote more successful? Spending any amount of time doing that is not valuable. So on the first tool I'll share with you is just to agree with yourself. Like, yeah, they are further along. They are landing deals I want to land. That doesn't have to mean anything about me or my future ability to be even more successful than I already am. And there's no value in me sitting here trying to compare and contrast. Like, that is the process you would give yourself. It's acknowledging it and then redirecting. Sometimes it's just really important not to fight with something, right? Trying to figure out and fight with yourself, oh, I'm better than, talk yourself out of it and talk yourself into, oh, I'm more successful or I know more of what I'm doing, or any of that is such a shaky way to handle this, because for the most part, you can talk yourself out of all of those justifications. It's just such a waste of your mental energy. So just agree with yourself and move on. It's true. They're ahead of me. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. That's the first tool. All right. The second tool is the opposite of this. It is not true. One of those examples that I was sharing with you, I said to the person, they were saying like, oh, this other consultant is winning so many deals. I've never won that type of deal before, that I'm trying to get into that, kind of sub niche. It feels so frustrating. They seem to already have the market share in that sub niche. And I said, wait a second, let's just take a step back. I don't think that's even true. We lie to ourselves so often. And I said, tell me, when have you landed this type of work? Tell me when you've done that type of work. Haven't you done at least one of those? And we identified 3 of them. When they thought, just by their initial reaction, I've never landed work in this sub niche like this other person is. And their thought that other consultant had captured all of the market share. When we really pressed on it and said, that is not true, that they've been landing all of these deals and you've landed none. When we pressed on that, we identified 3 of them that this consultant wasn't even giving themselves credit for. You're further than you give yourself credit for, most likely, most of the time. I find when I'm pressing consultants for the truth, just the data, we find we're tricking ourselves in our mind that we haven't done something that we actually have. So investigate for yourself, where is this not true? Where is this other person I'm comparing myself to not as far along? Or I'm as further along than I'm giving myself credit for. Again, I'm not suggesting to you that you sit here and ruminate on these things, but give yourself 5 minutes. The process is, number 1, it's true, so what? Number 2, it's not true. How is it not true? Remind yourself that a lot of times people say things, you know this, they're sharing all the best highlight reels on LinkedIn. They're giving you the highlight when they're talking to you. They're not sharing with you the full good, bad, and ugly picture that's really going on. So certainly don't compare their best to your worst, because you haven't even given yourself credit for what's going on and you're just taking them at face value. That's not helpful. So spend 5 minutes and remind yourself, how is this not even true? I'm not giving myself credit for what is actually happened, what I have done, how what I have done counts, even if you're trying to discount it. And as we wrap up, the last tool here is what I will give to you, which is the overall fix. A short routine here that you'll include after you look at both sides of this. How is this true? So what? How is this not true? Look at the data. Number 1, you want to look at and notice when you're doing this. Sometimes your brain gets really sneaky. Sometimes it's really easy to notice, right? I just looked at that email. This topic is on my mind because I'm about to record the episode. And I noticed that feeling of panic when the email subject line said I was behind with something. But oftentimes it's not so obvious. So notice for yourself when you're doing this. It's often an undercurrent. Notice that when you start feeling overwhelmed or anxiety or fear, those are great indicators that something like this is going on, that you're comparing yourself and not even realizing it. So notice what's going on. And then you want to be focusing on rebuilding the way that you see yourself and the way you think. I'm someone who, fill in the blank. I'm someone who lands high quality clients, has plenty of demand. Doesn't matter what those other people have. There's room for both of you. There's room for all of you. I'm someone who attracts high quality clients who will pay what I want to be paid, who will be happy that I work in the way that I work. Thinking through it that way, starting to build your identity in that way as a business owner. The next part of this process is to realign your thinking. This is where this fits in. How is this true? And so what? And then how is it not true? How are you lying to yourself? And realigning your thinking in the way of there's plenty of opportunity for everyone, getting yourself into an abundant mindset. And there is plenty of opportunity. It's where you're looking. If you're constantly focused on, oh no, there's too many consultants, there's too much competition, there's too much work, there's too many people and too much supply and not enough demand, like all of those things, you're going to find plenty of evidence to support yourself. Versus thinking about this in an abundant way, there's plenty of opportunity for everyone. There's more companies than ever who will work with consultants remotely. There are more companies than ever who are hiring solo independent consultants and seeing the value in your expertise. You have to direct your thinking. You must direct your thinking. That is part of this process. When you do not direct your thinking and you allow this comparison to go on and fester, then that's when you start suffering those short and long-term impacts we were talking about a minute ago. Realign your thinking to things like, There's plenty of opportunity for everyone, that abundance. I attract the best clients for the work that I do. You have a different personality than the other consultants who work in your space. Those matter, right? Your style, your personality, the way you approach things, that matters. And it matters to the clients that are attracted to what you do and want to hire you, engage you. So you want to notice. You want to have a purposeful plan of rebuilding your identity from that corporate identity into one of a business owner and realigning your thinking to that. Having the tools to redirect when you notice these comparisons coming up. Like for me, when I read that email, I looked at it, I felt the panic. I sort of laughed because of the timing of it all. I'm literally recording this episode. But it just reminded me like, oh, that's a lie. It's a lie. I could go down a rabbit hole for days thinking I'm behind on AI, for weeks, for months, for years, really, if I allowed myself to do that. And when I first started, I did. I would constantly look at what I was missing, what other people had that I didn't, all the skills, all of the things, and constantly consuming. That's what it will send you down if you don't redirect, notice it and redirect it. And finally, honestly, I told this to a consultant the other day, sometimes you just need to mute these things. You can have the way of looking at things, you can have the mental management, you can have the emotional management that we've been talking about today. You can put all of those things in place and they will help you to manage this situation. And on top of that, you can make life a lot easier for yourself by not going on LinkedIn for a while, for example, or not listening to a podcast that your competitor just started for their, to interview people, executives in the industry. And you're wondering, how are they getting on their calendar? Just mute it for a while. Give yourself a chance to start building the confidence that you have. Start building the identity for yourself. Start aligning your thinking so that it's easy for you, quick for you to notice it and overcome it when you start comparing yourself. All right, my friend, those are the tools to start leveraging to manage this comparison so that it doesn't have that long-term, even a short-term impact on your business. As we wrap up, to put this into episode, practice noticing. Notice when you're comparing. It's a way you're thinking. It's not just the thing that's creating the comparing. And over the short term, you can limit your exposure and redirect. And in the long run, you want to be purposeful in your work on your mindset and your identity and your ability to redirect. I will remind you to go take that consulting mindset audit at icmindset.com. IC for independent consultant, mindset.com. And I will see you again next week. Take care. Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melisaleberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.